Yesterday, if you were able to be with the sessions with us yesterday, we had Sandy Carter and Laura Wolf that were talking overall about social business strategy. And now I would like to bring up a series of women who are going to talk about using social tools to drive business innovation. So let's get the panelists up here. We have Rachel Sklar, the founder of Change the Ratio, who's moderating, and Maria Ogneva, the director of community at Yammer, Sloan Berend, VP of Digital Marketing at Lippy Taylor, Ekaterina Walter, Senior Social Media Strategist at Intel, Jen Friel, the owner and lifecaster of Talk Nerdy to Me Lover. She's wonderful. And Sophia Chung, who's a software engineer at Facebook. Please give them all a warm welcome. Thank you.
I'm Rachel, and thank you for just doing my opening work for me. That's fantastic. Okay, we're all mic'd up. Everybody can hear us. Good. So the topic for this panel is Business Goes Social. And when we had our panelist call the other day, the starting point we had was that it sounded like an incredibly broad topic. We could spend far more than an hour talking about how social media in all of its manifold forms is good for business and why businesses should be using social for everything basically that they do, all of their customer engagement, service, employee happiness, advertising, marketing, PR, all of it. And so we're going to start by just cutting through the basics and talking about what's different now than if we were having this panel 1 year ago, because as we all know, this industry moves at warp speed. And we're just going to start from where we are so that we can help, hopefully you guys leave with a way to take whatever it is you're doing into the future with it. So we're going to start. I practiced everybody's name, so I know I've got the pressure because we've got 2 Russians on the panel. But we're going to start with Maria Ogneva from Yammer. And then we'll just go down the line. And, well, I'm going to say everybody's name because I really want to get to hers. And Sloan Berend and Ekaterina Walter. But yeah, you can call her E, apparently. Jen Friel and Sophia Chung. All right, so we'll start with Maria. What's different now about talking about social media and business now than it would have been a year ago?
So versus a year ago and the previous years, I think social is really starting to come into its own, at least in the enterprise. I work at Yammer, which helps companies really communicate better, more effectively internally. So I think we're sort of getting into the point where executives are starting to think of social as more than lolcats on Facebook, and they're starting to understand that it can actually drive business value. And companies are starting to think about how to operationalize social and how to get it out of its silo, right? A couple of people tweeting on Twitter, what do you actually do with that? How do you become a better organization? How do you become a learning organization based on what you're seeing out there in the social channels? That's what, and much more data. Can we talk about data? There is so much more data available to us today than ever before.
Can we talk a little bit about how Yammer, in terms of being an internal tool for organizations, I think you said it's 85% of Fortune 500 companies use Yammer. That's got to be an innovation over the past year or so, based on what we know about Fortune 500 companies. No disrespect to any in the audience. Can you talk a bit about how the use of social media internally can really make a difference for a company's culture?
Oh, absolutely. It's huge. When you really look at it, what happens when you use social media internally, not only do you get the very tangible business benefits, like you're saving costs, you're not repurposing, you're not redoing the same work over and over, and you're communicating better. Those are very tangible benefits. But there are cultural benefits, right? There's this whole notion of transparency and the ability to talk across departments, talk across silos, really breaking down those silos. And it's really powerful when you can have a CEO of a company and a first-year associate in the same digital space talking about how to drive the company forward. So a really powerful example, one of our customers, Deloitte Australia, the CEO posted something. It was on Yammer. It was a policy change that the rank and file didn't necessarily agree with. And people started posting, this is really, really out of touch, this is a bad decision. But because he was able to see that response, instead of shutting it down, instead of firing people, what he went and did, he listened. He took those people out to coffee, but they talked about it, and they reversed the decision because it was really the best thing for the company. So that's really powerful, that the culture becomes a very different culture when you have people talking like that and really driving the business forward.
Sloan, in addition to your work at Lippy Taylor, you obviously have a huge background in nonprofits. Is this, I'm not sure exactly how much of the audience is engaged in the nonprofit sector. I would imagine quite a bit. How has social media sort of changed things from a year ago in the nonprofit sector? Because one of the things that I actually recall from my own work in the sector is that the innovators who were entering in the digital age were all using social media, but the established nonprofits who had been around for a while and were still doing sort of direct mail campaigns were really hard to sort of get up that curve. Has that changed?
Well, I think that the one element that I would say. Sorry about that. The one element that I think is a unifier that I talk about at Lippy Taylor and across my work is with women. So the agency that I'm at is focused on women as women's brands and women's issues. So I think that one of the things that's changed in the past year the most, and that continues to change in an ever-changing climate, is budget. It's the money that's being spent in social, both the money that's being spent by the brands, by the businesses on investing in social media as a communications platform and tool, as part of their campaigns, as part of being built into any type of engagement they're doing. And then also on the consumer side or the donor side or however you want to call it, but in that consumption, I think of businesses recognizing that women are, 75% of purchase decisions for the home, that women are bigger communicators. Women are outnumbering men on Facebook. They're more
on
of them
Twitter too.
On Twitter, Pinterest. There's just so many places where women are having their voice be heard and increasingly saying, my opinion matters. And I think that what I see with a lot of brands I work with in the women's space, in beauty and skincare and technology and financial services, women impact everything, either for themselves, they impact their friends, their nieces and nephews. There's a big sector in families, obviously. And so women are really saying, I want transparency and I want to know what your business is about. From an agency perspective, a couple of years ago, it was, oh, we have a pitch coming up or there's something going on, there's a strategic plan. Can you just sprinkle some social in? And you get the deck when it's almost done and you're looking at it. What does that mean? It's
Hashtag.
Put in a hashtag campaign. But as some preparation for this panel, when I was flying out from New York, I brought a couple of different magazines. I had Shape, I had People, I had Fast Company, I had The New Yorker. I challenge you to flip through magazines or anywhere that you're consuming media and look at how many campaigns are including social in the way they're advertising them. Flipping through a magazine, more than half, it includes either a hashtag, a URL for YouTube, or for their website. Websites are not going away, right? Where do your assets live? Where is it important for people to know about your brand equity, have an emotional connection with you, more than just a functional connection with you? But it was just amazing. There's Facebook campaigns, there's sweepstakes, there's everything that's happening, but they're including social in the advertising space, which is amazing in a channel that's usually just one way and not meant to be a two-way communication. So I think that's the biggest change, because a year ago, I would guarantee flipping through a magazine, for example, you're just not going to see as many companies in the technology sector or in any sector including that much social.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about women specifically a little bit later on in the panel, but just for everybody's reference before I forget, for me, the Holy Grail article on that subject is Why Women Rule the Internet by Aileen Lee on TechCrunch from March 2011. I'll say it again because it is that important, because you will all want to write this down. It's got all the stats you need to make this argument. It's amazing. Why Women Rule the Internet by Aileen Lee on TechCrunch, March 2011. Can you tell that I reference it a lot? Just to your point on the use of social media, I remember the first time that I noticed that movies were starting to, on commercials, direct people to their Facebook page and not their URL. And there's no question that that is now the default, which we'll talk a bit with Sophia about. But Katarina, or E to your friends. Let's talk a little bit about Intel. What has changed at Intel, both externally and internally, in the last year where social media is concerned, and what kind of pace of change is there inside a big incumbent for new technologies like this, even though it is a technology company?
Right. Well, you know, innovation was always in our DNA, so we like to be upfront. So we've been doing, we actually had Social Media Center of Excellence for over 4 years. 4 or 5 years ago, we rolled out a huge training on why the shift is happening. So we've started a while ago, but I think in the past year, several things. So one of the things that you're seeing is more and more of our business units, because we're a big company, 90, 100,000 people across the world. So there's business units, there's different geos. They're kind of letting go. So Sandy Carter mentioned in her workshop yesterday, she said, brands have hard time just kind of letting go and losing control. So, those central marketing teams were always kind of upfront and understanding that, the rest of the company is still catching on. So it's been happening more and more in the past year. Another, I think, great thing that we've done recently, our VP of marketing, Nancy Baggett, she just combined our traditional media or media team with our social media team. And I think this is a really forward thinking. There is a camp of people who wants to attract attention that says, traditional media is dead. There's a camp of people that says social media is going to take over. The reality is, if you don't use them in an integrated way, you're not going to be effective. And I think just overall, what I am personally excited to see is that short-term drive-by thinking of social media is gone. Maria mentioned that, oh, wow, I'm doing social media. I just opened up my Facebook page, check mark, right? Where where our stakeholders, our campaign teams, our geographies, business units are starting to think of, if I'm putting a strategy together, if I'm starting with the key questions, am I asking the right questions of how social is going to be integrated in it? And they are. And that's exciting. It took a lot of work, a lot of, hand-holding in some cases, a lot of enablement and education, but really stakeholders starting to see that is the only way to ask that question. So it's not a drive-by thinking anymore, it's really a long-term strategy and building long-term relationships. I mean, there's a lot more than that, I think, that happened last year, but I think these are the things that I'm most excited about.
The thing that strikes me the most in what you just said is that Intel merged its media and social media departments, which I think is huge and very, very interesting, considering how long that media department has been around.
That's true.
Was there, I don't know how much you can speak to this, but was there resistance from the media department in that merger? Like, was it a politically awkward thing to have happen, or?
That's a good question, right? Because a lot of times you would expect it would be. There's, especially in the big brands, there's a lot of politics. I don't think so. I don't think we had that. I was actually, saying that I'm surprised we didn't do it a year ago because we saw it coming. We knew this is the right way to go. But I think everybody who's involved in it saying that is the forward thinking. That is the most exciting thing to do. And we have a lot of ways we're actually measuring our success internally. So we had a whole, custom way we're measuring our media efforts, and now we're actually building the social media analytics into that. And I think as you see some of that data, you're starting to get more excited because you're saying that is effective. It is working. It is really reaching people on a different level. And the combination of just raising awareness and building deep relationship is, I think, is the way to go. So I think the answer is no, not that I've seen.
Interesting. So Jen is our gonzo on this panel. She's our Hunter S. Thompson. Ask her about getting a brick thrown at her head or getting her arm set on fire or numerous other escapades. As our alternative sort of like personal brand, out in the world, representative on the panel, how has it changed to be able to get your message out, meet your community, get press, get paid, right?
Yeah.
That's the point of this. In the last year, have you seen Like, has it been a gradual climb, or have you seen a huge spike? What's your experience been, and how much do you adopt new forms of social in your sort of the totality of what you do?
Wow, that's such a loaded question.
I know, we can take it in bites.
Thank you. No, it's, first of all, let me just express to all of you right now, and I know this was talked about in the keynote breakfast, this is the greatest time to be alive right now. I can't even believe that I'm here and I don't work in Intel. Like, are you kidding me? I followed her on Twitter for like a while. This is like so exciting. But as far as everything goes, it has gotten tremendously easier in the last year. I started my website November 3rd, 2009, and I literally had to bootstrap it by couch surfing for an entire year. I only had $10 to my name, but traveled to 12 states and literally built my entire brand by saying to nerds like, hey guys, here I am, I've checked in, kind of what's up, and being super vulnerable with everything of like telling people like, I literally don't have a home tonight. Someone would offer me a couch, always. Like, I never went without a shower, I never went without a place to stay or anything. But literally $10 to my name for an entire year.
Okay, we're all wondering, anything skeevy or weird? Like, did you, might as well get it out there.
No, but I did do, but during that time to like create a social life, which I do get asked about a lot, I did 103 dates in 9 months and documented the organic route of attraction based on the OkCupid algorithm. So of those 103 dates during that time, it was so exciting. But of those 103 dates, there was only one really, really, really bad date, which I don't even want to go there. He was a hockey player and retired and not only had ADD, but short-term memory loss. But
Did he have all his teeth?
yes, he was just horrible. He didn't pick up any of the social cues or anything. He tried like kissing me twice, but that was the only sketchy thing.
I'm gonna have a separate panel just on that experience after.
I was just gonna say.
But as far as like the actual like structuring a business around it, so now I have my own new media production company, but like it took me the first year to really like figure out my own voice and to really truly get quote unquote good at what I was doing, whatever that truly meant. And then from that, what I do is narrative advertising. So it's more, people understand, these businesses understand that social media has credibility. They need to be involved in it in some capacity. So what I sort of branded myself as being was the crazy chick that will probably do anything, develop a social experiment around it, and get people talking about your brand and your company. So for me in the last year, it's been overwhelming and tremendous. Like I'm so grateful every day to get to wake up to just doing what I love. And we have 75 writers now, and it's crazy awesome. But in the last year, it's been so much easier because before, like in 2010, I had to sort of educate and then execute. And that task was daunting because all I wanted to do was like go out there and say, just give me your products, like please let me go play, like blah, like I just want to like burst at the seams with how excited I am in this space. And to sort of get people to understand that from the creative perspective was nuts. But I had to sort of do my own due diligence and structure the business around it and then figure out exactly how to move forward. But the engagement has been so huge too in the last year. Not only have again, the credibility and everything come from all these massively huge companies and everyone that's sort of involved in it, but it's like people are actually talking. We're having the most amazing conversations. Even last night, I checked in, at this hotel and checked in at the bar, and fans of the site came to kick it. And it was so great, because then I hear their stories, and then we continue to talk in Twitter, and there's never a disconnect. It's the most amazing thing ever. But that engagement, is not only, in real time happening in 140 characters. It's not only happening on a Facebook like page. It's not only, comments on threads on Facebook. We're living this, and it's awesome.
Wow. Love it. No enthusiasm gap here.
That's how it should
Sophia, so what's so interesting is I'd like to ask the question, what's different at Facebook now than a year ago? We all know the answer, but when the panels like this began, Facebook was the upstart and the new thing and the thing that people were skeptical about and I'm not really sure I want people knowing my business or seeing my pictures. And now it is sort of the incumbent, right? And we all know what's different with Facebook this year that wasn't last year, but you guys have integrated, more than 9 million apps and websites have integrated with Facebook, and since January, more than 3,000 timeline apps have launched next? If you
I
can
think one thing
divulge.
is, most people know what Facebook is, but if you actually really think about the root of it, Facebook as a product is really the way for people to communicate, it's people's identity. Like, the product is the people, actually, right? And more, Facebook is becoming not just the way you communicate, but it's becoming who you are. Like, these are the things I've done, these are the things I like, I want, these are the people that I know. And like, brands can actually really take advantage of that to, really like get distribution. And if you think about the way we use the internet has actually even changed over the past few years. If you think about in the very beginning of the internet, I remember being in middle school and like, I had my dial-up modem and I would guess URLs. I would be like, does Benetton have a site? And you would guess, right? You had no idea. And then slowly after that, it became the era of the search, right? Once you start searching for products that you like, things that you're interested in. And even now, we're seeing it move into a new era where it's the era of social discovery. So now you're not necessarily seeking things out, but you're learning about what you like or what you want to do from your friends. And it's absolutely huge. Like, once you add social context to brands, to events, to products, it's absolutely huge. So last year, we launched something called Open Graph, which really allows other brands and other third-party apps to kind of connect with really integrate into the Facebook connection. I mean, most people know Facebook like, right? There's like the action of liking something. But there's so much more that you do that's just liking things, right? There's a world outside of Facebook. People run races, they watch movies, they read books, and all of that's not necessarily captured on your Facebook. But we've built a way, it's an open protocol called Open Graph that allows people to write these actions and objects back to Facebook. And it's great for the person, for the user, because it's their identity, right? Like, these are the things that I do, these are the things that I like. And it's great for the brand, right? Because they get this huge distribution. We've seen Pinterest, which is a pretty recent startup. They've integrated with an Open Graph, and they post to Facebook. If you pin something, if you follow a person, if you like something, they've seen their daily active users from Facebook increase by 60%. There's also like iHeartRadio, which is a radio streaming service. They publish now listens, so people now can publish the songs that they listen, the things they like, and they've seen a 30 times increase of monthly active users. So just by publishing your actions and kind of trying to understand what the person is outside of Facebook, you can get this immense distribution and huge social context for what people like to do.
So we've talked about, we've name-dropped a whole bunch of different social sites here right now. Even in the beginning session here, we've talked about, obviously, Facebook, Pinterest. I don't know, I can't remember if we said the word Twitter, but you said 140 characters, which is now, by the way, there's so many social networks, but 140 characters has become the shorthand for speaking in social. I don't think we mentioned Tumblr yet. We did mention
Google
Foursquare. Sorry?
Google Plus.
We did not mention Google Plus. That's true. Instagram, yeah, my God. Feel free to Instagram us all on this panel. What moves the most merch? Or is that too simplistic a question? Since Pinterest was such an incredible sort of explosion. It was all of a sudden, oh my God, have you heard of Pinterest? Actually, a whole lot of women across the country had, but the media hadn't, and the investors, aside from their initial handful, hadn't. And so everybody suddenly was hearing of Pinterest and seeing just how much engagement it had. And I actually did a little experiment. I put Pinterest into Alexa, which gauges PageRank, and I put it against HuffPo, Politico, TechCrunch, and Mashable, just to see how it stacked up. And in every category, it was significantly above all of them, and the only category where it was significantly below was bounce rate. So I found that very interesting. But they're all powerful and amazing. So what, practically speaking, if people in this room had one social network to really do a deep dive on, what would you recommend? Or is that a trick question because you have to use them together? Discuss.
I think it's a trick question. It's a trick question. I think it's 9% of total businesses are on Pinterest. I feel very differently about Pinterest as a person, as someone on the weekend or at night playing around on the internet than I do in business every day, talking to major CPGs, working on global accounts. It's a different type of perspective. Personally, I think, practically speaking, Pinterest works really well for brick and mortar stores. There's a legal issue. Legal teams that I work with are just like, I have to go to one more seminar on a new platform. Are you kidding me? Because there's always something different that these legal teams are having to figure out in terms of ownership of images. So I'm super enthusiastic and excited about social media. But there's certain elements of it that have a practicality that I have to bring to the table when I'm developing strategies. And a lot of that is, does it make sense for you? Do you know the consumer insights? Do you have a Sally is 42 and she makes $60,000 and she lives in this place? Like, who is this person that's buying your products, and where are they shop? What else are they buying? What else are they doing? Where else are they involved? And build a campaign around those types of things. I know in the beauty industry, there's very specific consumer insights that are very different than the technology, than financial services. And I think that a lot of the one element of social that I see continuing to grow and evolve over time is that there is not a one-size-fits-all for any business or for any social strategy. How many people do you have? What are your resources? How much money are you going to spend in it? Are you dipping your toe in to get your senior management engaged and excited in the hopes in the next fiscal you can pull more money in? Or are you making a drastic change and saying this is a direction we're going as a company? I have one, I'll give a quick example. I have a beauty brand that we're doing the global repositioning. They're over 100 years old. They're in beauty counters at department stores. All of you know who they are. And they've decided that they're skewing a little, they want to skew a little younger. For younger, that means 35 for them. So they want to go from a 45 plus to a 35 plus. And they've decided.
I love that definition of younger, by the way.
Yeah, they're very excited about it. And what they want to do is we created a global strategy for them that says we are putting a stake in the ground as an early adopter. They want to be an early adopter to social media. That means that they launched a Pinterest. They're going to have really engaging apps and stuff happening on Facebook. They're going to be on Twitter. We're doing global playbooks for their top 14 countries. That includes China and how that's going to impact Weibo and all these other places. We've had to go to legal and we've had to go to their management and say, we're going to be early adopters. So if we're going to launch a Pinterest, we might not always be right. We might have some of these images and they have to get pulled. We're not always going to have all the answers the way that you do for a business that says, I want to be middle of the curve. I don't want to be the early adopter. So I think that for them, it was understanding we're going to be in this place in social. That means the following things, X, Y, Z, and they are there. And that I think is a very strong, strategic, smart way of thinking about their business in the long term, not just for the next year, but for the next 3, 5, 10 years of a repositioning.
Yeah, as a brand, I second that. It's funny because people say, oh, my space is dead. Well, not if you're in music and art industry, because that's where they all hang out. And there are some brands and some businesses that are highly successful engaging with the communities and establishing relationships, right? So I agree. You have to look at what works for you, what are your objectives, and then what resources you have. Because if you open up all the way across all networks and you can't keep up with moderation and growing the community, then you basically wasted your efforts.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that I would love to say the social network is Facebook, right? But that's not necessarily the case. Whereas
Movie title.
Because you'll see that social networks are going to integrate with each other, right? Like Pinterest is integrating with Facebook and Twitter, and there's so many sub-communities that come together to inform someone's identity, right? Yeah. Pinterest is kind of things that you achieve or things that you want. LinkedIn is your community for work, and it's just there's different communities and they kind of come together to form this whole identity of a person.
I agree with what the lady said, that your business objectives should be the ones driving the decisions. I'd actually take it a step further and say that don't think about tools first. Think about your business objectives. Think about what you want to do, and only then review tools and see which tools will actually help you get there. So, for example, we were trying to showcase our customer passion. Our customers, for a business tool, our customers are really passionate. They make cupcakes. They stage flash mobs when they launch Yammer. This is not a joke. They really do that. And for that to happen for business software, that's pretty incredible. So we were sitting on this gold mine of these stories and very visual cues from our community. What can we do with it? So I was going to build, a WordPress site just to showcase all of that. But in the meantime, I was like, why not Pinterest, right? So we went and we did a Pinterest page, but we didn't, and the page says customer love, and it's all the wonderful visual things that our customers do. They knit sweaters, they do cupcakes, they do all kinds of stuff. But it's like the problem and the question came before the tool. We never sat down and said, Pinterest, what should we do with that? We had a problem, and then that was sort of a good remedial solution until we can do a really amazing website to show everything. So.
There is definitely no cookie cutter approach to social media, like at all. You can't sit there and say, and even if any of you are social media consultants or ninjas, gurus, whatever we're calling ourselves these days, just please don't say rockstar. Exactly. I'm like, how can anyone be an expert in this field? But there really is no cookie cutter approach. That's where your digital strategy is so important, because you not only have to send out the message, but then you have to sort of actively engage and listen to what people are saying. And it's, as everyone here has been basically saying, it's just about how you sort of articulate said story across each network. Again, with Twitter, it's only 140 characters. Facebook, it's different. Pinterest is more image-oriented. So you're going to tell a different story across different platforms. But that's so exciting, because that's where the innovation happens.
Exactly.
That's when real awesomeness can occur.
Exactly. Well, so Facebook has this, they have the stickers in their office, and it's written everywhere if you go in, and they actually can give you stickers on that. And it says, this journey is only 1% finished. And when I talk about social media, I talk about that. That innovation, just because some other brands came up with awesome things, doesn't mean that you can't. It changes so fast. There's so many opportunities for creativity, for craziness, for new ways to connect with your customers. It's basically a bottomless pit, if you ask me, of opportunities. So you just need to find them, and need to be passionate enough to find them and connect with your customers in the right level, in the right way. And that's where the real fun begins. I think as a marketer, this is the most exciting time to be alive, honestly. And 50% of population is under 30. Think about it, 50%. Right? Which means these are the new digital natives. That's all they do. That's how they communicate, is for social. So if you're a marketer, that's a no-brainer.
I think one thing that's important too is my personal feeling is that it has to feel comfortable for you as well.
Yep.
I have not been able to get myself into Pinterest the way that I have been able to get myself into, say, Twitter. That was really natural immediately.
Yeah.
But though I have sort of tried, I made the page, all of that, it has to feel like you have to want to return there, not only to market and push out, but also to take in. They're two perfectly poised sides of the equation that you really need to have both as a part of. And I think that's where best what makes your specific business, your specific venture right across these different networks. And that leads me into my devil's advocate question. Might this all be something of a racket? Does everybody, do we really need to connect and engage and all of that across all of these different networks? The amount of time conceivably that one could sink into branding across the world could really take a lot of time. And is that fully necessary for every single business? Or might the naysayers be maybe a little bit right? I don't know. I'm just asking, because that's what we do on panels.
I think it's about maximizing where your strengths are sort of starting to form. I agree with you on Pinterest. I am actually personally not the biggest fan of Pinterest, and I'm a lawyer's daughter, so immediately I just saw liability, liability, liability. Do not want to get sued. So that was my immediate red flag. But it was the same thing with Twitter and Facebook, and those are my, Twitter in particular, one of my strongest suits. I do think it's very easy to get overwhelmed with so many social platforms, and I feel like the social media experts only mimic it. We make it worse, because you'll have Joe in Nebraska saying, "Oh my God, the latest thing just came out. This is so great. You need to be on this immediately." And so then you'll spend your entire afternoon, maybe doing research or setting up your avatar, everything in between. But is it really going to be the next big thing? We're creating our own like vacuum of hype in some of these platforms, and I think it's your responsibility to sort of sit there and say, this is what's working for this brand. This is what's working for me. And own that. That's great. Keep going.
Right.
Yeah, and figure out where your customers are too. Like, if you're a brand, figure out where your customers are, where your prospects are, where your, the rest of your ecosystem, suppliers, anyone that you work with, and be there, right? And you only have so many hours in a day. You should not be in 50 million places. I'd rather see you do 3 things really, really well than 10 things really poorly. It matters, right? And whichever one is conducive to how you want to present your brand, present yourself, and also what feels natural, to Rachel's point. If it's just not the right environment for you, then it's not right. I love Twitter. I feel like that's where I meet new people. That's where I'm exposed to new information. And that's where enough of the right people are to make me go there. Google+, there are some people that I personally want to connect with, but for our brand, it's not meaningful, so we haven't been totally engaged there because it's an opportunity cost. We'd rather focus our time in our customer communities where customers are actually talking and need help and want to build something together with us.
Well, Rachel, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think social is an equalizer, but it's not the great equalizer because it still has to be senior management and having a strategic vision for the company and knowing that social plays a role in it. But I don't know that I think that social can save a business if it doesn't have some of the right stuff in place.
Basics.
Pieces that make sense. But at the same time, I think that there's, to Katerina's point about where we're only at 1%, there are some really amazing startups coming up in the social space that whatever the next term of social discovery is, whatever we say next year or 2 years from now, that I think will be on the forefront of that. And those are things like how we manage, say, for example, advertising online, right? So there's some really great services that usually you had to be a really big company, you had to pay a couple millions of dollars to your media buying, you had to have media planning. It's this gigantic thing that only huge companies get to have access to. But now, not only can any small business have Facebook ads, work when promoted tweets on Twitter, have YouTube, but there's services that can help you plan that and optimize daily, like an Adaptly, which is a startup out of New York. So how amazing that any business could basically go in a CPM, CPC model and act like a P&G or a Unilever and really be able to optimize on a daily basis. Another startup I love out of New York is called CrowdTwist, which is in the burgeoning space of loyalty. Because as of right now, when we talk about purchase intent and where our consumers are purchasing, it's really hard to know if the person who's opening your email newsletter or forwarding it, buying a product on your .com, making a comment on your Facebook post, retweeting something, who is that person, those 5, 10, 50 people? And we don't often know who they are. We might know our top supporters per channel, but so there's a great growth in the loyalty space to be able to pull and aggregate all of those consumers together and say, here are the people that are really going out, talking about you and supportive of you on a daily basis. And then there's all sorts of innovations happening and disruption in every single space. I was at a restaurant a couple weeks ago and the man was taking the order on a Nook, on a Kindle, and it was like attached into the kitchen. And I thought it was like the most brilliant thing. It was in Santa Barbara, California. I've never seen it in San Francisco or LA or New York. I've never seen it since. But he was taking the whole order, and basically he said it cuts down on the time for the kitchen. It's this, I'm not making as many mistakes, and he could do with a Square, the credit card processing right there on the spot. And I went to the Facebook and Twitter pages afterwards at this restaurant because I was so impressed with this sort of technology that they had adopted. I mean, it was amazing. Your food comes faster, you're tipping more because you're happy about the experience that you were getting. Like, think of all those elements in that one specific case and how cool it is that technology was able to propel the business forward, and that in social, people were responding and saying, like, go to this place, it's so amazing, it has this cool thing that's going on there. So,
But the food has to be good.
But the food has to be
That's
good.
true, the product has to be good.
Yes.
Well, remember you guys when World Wide Web came across and everybody said, that is never going to happen. Remember back then, think back then, right? People going, internet? Yeah, no, that's just for some couple of nerds that want to communicate with themselves like this. I think we're at the same, at the same juncture with social. The reality is, and that's my perspective as a brand, you cannot not do it. You just cannot not do it. If at a minimum, all you do is go out there and listen and understand what people talk about you or questions they put out there, it is expectation anymore that if you put out an inquiry, I don't care what network you're in, that the brand responds. That's the expectations that young people have, that the expectations that social is developing among the general population. So I think you cannot not do it. Some of the elements of it is hype. There's so many businesses and tools that come and go. But you need to recognize what are your basics, per Sloan, what Sloan said. What are your basics and how, and what are your goals and what's your purpose and how that fits in.
Yeah. So I wanted to, I just want to make sure that we get to the women discussion since we are at the Women in Technology conference. So I'm going to stake that, plant that flag right now. And now I don't know which one of you were going to say something.
It's okay.
When you were going to say? Yeah.
I was going to say it's easy
we'll
to cling onto traditional media because it's something that we're so comfortable with. Like growing up, we see commercials and print ads and radio ads, and for us, moving to a social space is something a little unfamiliar. It's a little more difficult.
Right.
It's a little scarier. But you can't turn a blind eye at how impactful social is. If you just think about ads, if some ad is thrown at you, and then we've run experiments where we've put your friends also like this. Imagine seeing an ad and saying here's a Kindle, and seeing an ad that says your Kindle and 10 of your friends love the Kindle. You're so much more compelled to be interested in the product.
Yes.
We're so influenced by what our friends do and what people do around us that it would be kind of naive to just turn a blind eye in social, I think.
Also, I think it would be naive to opt only to go with a traditional media solution. So for example, anyone who buys airtime for the Super Bowl has to be just totally an idiot if they don't also build an entire social campaign around what will happen on the second screen when people see that commercial. And now we're at the stage where nobody even debuts the commercials at the Super Bowl. You get the ads released. You click on the Huffington Post, and there's a list of all the Super Bowl ads before the Super Bowl even happens. So
Plus social TV, right?
Yes, I mean it's an incredible thing right now. It's not an either or. It's an essential to integrate them. I did want to touch on where Sloan began talking about woman, because I recently ran a panel at another conference called Woman, Your Secret ROI Engine. And I'm curious if, given what we were saying before about women as drivers in terms of influencing purchasing decisions, even in areas where they're not targeted for those decisions, like newsflash, women buy cars.
Yeah.
Technology. Exactly. In the majority of users on giant networking sites, 55%, I think, of Facebook, 55% of Twitter, women drive 60+% of the liking and sharing activity on Facebook.
80% on Pinterest, something like that.
Oh yeah, Pinterest. It's a crazy number on Pinterest. Groupon, 77% is driven by women. Guilt. I mean, we could go on and on. So in my experience as a woman mongerer, change ratio is about change ratio of visibility of women. For those of you who don't know, I'm a babe magnet. So I frequently engage with people who are like, well, we looked at the end of our arms and we only saw 10 fingers and none of them were lady fingers, so we didn't have any woman on the panel, without actually saying this is a priority and we're going to make this something that we invest in. We invest time, we invest money. So taking that a step further, should there be a budget line in businesses for targeting women as consumers and having women at the table for decision making, going forward internally? I mean, it's such a biased, loaded question because of what this room is, but I genuinely think it merits a specific response and consideration.
Well, just like businesses now have a budget line for young adults, right? 18 to 35, and there's different ranges within that. But every business that have any common sense right now has that as a target based on just the population and activity. And for those strategies, they have social integration. Almost 90% of the strategy has social integration in it, right? So same needs to be around women, smartly, right? Not like, what was that, Dell launched women pink page or something. So one brand launched the pink page for women, not like this, but really truly understanding women and figuring out how can they serve them and their needs. Absolutely, I'm
not sure I
surprised.
see any pink up here today.
I know, right?
It's like peach-ish. My half-off nail polish might count. Anyone else have sort of specific thoughts on this? You touched on it earlier.
I have actually a very interesting example of this. So like a month ago, almost exactly, Dodge flew me down to Austin, and I love that you even used this as an example, but Dodge flew me down to Austin for like an all-expense paid trip, basically, to test drive a car. Now, I basically posted, my experience. I'm a life caster, so I literally just document everything. I'm not a car expert. I have bought a car. I lived in a car to launch my business, literally.
That makes you an expert.
Exactly. So it totally, if nothing else, I can sit there and at least have an experience with this and tell the story, which is just what I do. So Dodge flew me out there. I posted this picture of me face planting on a bed, because I still get really excited to sleep in beds every night. It's like the greatest thing ever after couch surfing. So I took a picture of me face planted on this bed, and my buddy he's the now former editor of Jalopnik, which is a big car blog. He saw all the likes, and everything in between. In the conversation that I was genuinely having, I had over 50 likes on the picture. And he basically took that to one of his journalists and said, and the headline was, 4 hours later, what does this nerdy relationship blogger have to do with cars? And basically, they reamed me on Jalopnik. It was picked up by Gawker. It was picked up by so many other car manufacturers. It was trending on Yahoo the next day at number 5 with Dodge Dart Drive. I mean, I literally had to go into PR overhaul of explaining to Chrysler. I'm like, this is just what's happening right now. Oh my God. But stayed really calm and just sort of held my ground. But here they were, Chrysler specifically invited me down to have this experience to do what I did. They were specifically looking for social media. They wanted, the quote unquote experts or whatever that means, and they were targeting specifically women. There were 19 outlets there. It was me and geekmoms.com. That's it, of the women that were there. But I personally got singled out because of it, and all I did was get the conversation going about the car. It was great. Chrysler was so pleased. They're like, please come back. Ford invited me to an event the following week. They're like, please, can you do what you just did for that? Because that was pretty great. But here's this car company, reaching out to sort of 2 women specifically, both from the mom perspective and from 18 to 34-year-old females. And no matter what, at the end of the day, we still got it done. And I talked about the car, talked about my experience, and thanks for the free press.
I also think that however you are externally, whether you appeal to women or not, or you're deliberate in creating women-specific programs or youth-specific programs, how you are inside as an organization, it's going to matter to how you are externally. If you don't have women in leadership in your company, if you don't have a culture that's inclusive, you're going to have a very hard time to genuinely establish things that matter externally.
I'd like to quote my friend Cindy Gallup here, who was on that panel, the woman as, oh, hey, what up, Cindy? Who said on the woman as your secret engine of ROI panel, she said, quote, there is a lot of money to be made by taking women seriously and by letting them know that you are taking them seriously.
Amen to that.
Yeah, amen to that. And I mean, I totally agree with the young adult. The same goes for Hispanic. I mean, a lot of African American. I mean, there's
exactly.
Social allows you to customize your message. Why wouldn't you?
All right.
I don't.
Right.
Okay.
Pretty obvious.
I was just asking.
You did. Job point, but it's endlessly true. I mean, you can have one, and you can have split demos, right? So a lot of businesses, I'm sure everyone in this room, you have 2 or 3 different demos that you're targeting. So you can create individual customized plans of how you're going to communicate to them at the same time and separately and
Let
different
alone
places.
the demos that you don't even know that you
Yeah,
have.
totally.
Igniter is a really good example of a startup that was a social dating site that took off in India. And they were like, well, I guess we're an Indian dating site then. So it can
Well,
happen.
I'm an engineer and I don't know much about budget. That's not my world at all. But as an engineer, we build a product and you think about like who your target audience
Right.
is. And I'm sure that applies, whether you're advertising or you're like an engineer, like you absolutely focus your efforts on, who's going to be the audience, who's going to be using this, who's going to be seeing this. So it makes so much sense to bet budget towards, if women are people that are going to be buying or going to be using. Absolutely to like.
And women are the best storytellers. I mean, think about it. If you're trying to find your people who are loyal to your brand or your personality, your business, whatever it is, right? They are the one who tell the best stories. It's funny that if you look tech brands, and I'm a tech brand, so honing on that. A lot of stories that are being told are from a geeky male, nerdy. How to take the system apart and put it back together perspective. But on our Facebook page, we're getting amazing stories of women who, we just had a quick sweepstakes on our page, and a young woman won the laptop, and she wrote back and said, "You guys have no idea how much it means to me that I'm sitting next to my father in bed in the hospital, taking care of him, and able to discard my 5-year-old machine that doesn't have Wi-Fi on it, and use this new amazing technology to actually connect and not only do work, but give updates to my family in real time, on how he's doing, and take care of him. Actually keep the job, take care of my family at the same time." We don't, as brands, shine the light on stories like that, and showing how women are the essential, kind of core that keeps the families together, right? That how they live, the stories they tell. We just tend to kind of, at least some of the brands, like technology brands, just here's a male nerdy guy. Let's let him tell a story.
Speaking of the Super Bowl, that Best Buy commercial, how many people have seen that Best Buy commercial featuring only male technology innovators? And that doesn't make me want to go to Best Buy. It doesn't. It really doesn't. And it doesn't speak to me and doesn't speak to the community that I represent. So I'm not actually sure what the protocol is on questions, if we're supposed to take them or not, but caution to the wind. Who has a question? You. Hi, will you say your name and where you're from?
I'm Lee Dow, and I'm here representing the Super. And I had a question. You've all talked a lot about social media for marketing and advertising. Thank you. But my question was really, my background is more in using social for service delivery. So, when you market through social media, you inadvertently sometimes open the door to providing service through social media. So can you talk a little bit about your experiences there and what you find works really well in using social media for service delivery?
Do it. Just do it. That is the best channel.
But you can make a lot of mistakes if you don't have a strategy
That's
in
fine.
place for that
Apologize
channel.
and move on. People know you're human. People want to know there is a brand, you're human. They want to know that there's a person behind them. That's as easy as it is. I'm sorry, guys. I'm speaking for all of you, but just, just get it done and move on, and make sure you have enough resources. If you open that door, which you should, you don't have a choice. Make sure you have enough resources to support it. You made a mistake, apologize, move on. You know how many people you'll turn from haters to loyalists for that? That is the golden opportunity that everybody is afraid of. Don't be. Just do it.
But have a crisis escalation.
Exactly. Have a plan. Have a plan. Well, yeah. I'm just so used to that we have one of ours that I'm just make sure that you have all the, why, if this happens, what would I do? Just contingency planning. But other than that, you'll learn as you go and your plan becomes stronger. We learned as we went, but we made a lot of mistakes, but now we have a really strong framework.
And make sure you resource yourself well to be successful,
Exactly.
because you will need access to various resources from inside of your organization, maybe outside, to actually service your customers. So make sure you sort of build that in.
Exactly.
Any other questions? Thanks. Will you just say your name and where you're from?
Sure. Hi, I'm Ann Shug with EMC. As part of my new role at work, I'm supposed to be tweeting. And honestly,
I like it.
What's your Twitter handle so we can all follow you and tweet at you?
What? At Ann Shug.
How do we spell it?
So here,
A-N-N.
S-H-O-O-K.
S-H-O-O-K.
Yes.
A-N-N-S-H-O-O-K.
Everyone's-
Everybody,
And
give
this
her a warm
is-
Twitter
And this
welcome.
is Lynn Markedon. She's my hero at EMC because she's helping our group to learn to do this, right?
Awesome.
So honestly, the question is, how do you get started tweeting? I look at other people's tweets and I see people starting out with, oh, I'm getting on a plane to go here, or I'm getting on a plane to go there. And I think, well, that's all I do. That's not that interesting.
Actually,
What are
that
you
makes you
doing
seem
there,
fabulous.
right?
Yeah.
I'm getting on a fabulous plane to go be fabulous somewhere. I'm
I guess
fabulous.
I can do that. But what are some of the strategies for getting started, getting more comfortable tweeting, getting more involved in it? Because I think it's great. I think it's wonderful, but I'm just trying to get started.
Yeah. Twitter.
Yeah, go ahead.
Twitter is a conversation. This is actually what really ticked me off about when Twitter initially launched, was the people that were suggested to follow were pretty much like all celebrities. And celebrities don't reply you back.
No.
So you're like reading how awesome their life is and seeing pictures of their kids and dogs and everything in between. And people are like,
Timberlake, why don't you love
why
me?
do I get on Twitter? Like, I don't get it. It's conversations. Start off by literally, talking to anyone that maybe you admire, but like on a personal level, like peer to peer. Like, hey, friend over here that maybe I met at this thing that said something really wise, especially if you're traveling. I'm sure you probably want to connect with these people. Don't follow these crazy celebrities because they don't talk back. They don't say anything. And then you'll start to develop your own voice. And the more that you just get used to it, and literally like every day, download the app on your phone, make it a habit. It's a conversation. It's ongoing at all times. But just you have to sort of create that engagement within your own like ecosphere. You have to be active, and you have to answer your @replies. Make sure you check your @replies.
Second that.
Respond to everyone.
Right. Correct.
Conversation. Can you imagine literally like going into any sort of discussion and only having, speaking your side of something, and then walking away when the other person goes to speak? How rude is that?
But can I add something here? You are allowed to block the trolls. Like, it's not incumbent on you to be polite to people who are jerks. I learned that the hard way.
I think you're absolutely right. It's all about engagement. Whereas, if you make a statement that just doesn't require a follow-up, like no one's going to follow up, right? If you said, I'm getting on a plane, there's no follow-up. But if you inject some humor in it, you ask a question, there's going to be a ton of people responding to that. I think there was one guy who was running the Lane Bryant page on Facebook, and all he did was say, like this if you're happy it's Friday. And instantly, everyone was liking it. It's like you just do something that just causes some engagement, some response, and that really channels the engagement.
But there's two things I think. It's one is engagement, and engage and respond. No matter how big your following is, it gets harder and it gets bigger, but respond. But second is add value. Figure out why people following you and what's your community and what's your voice. What are you tweeting about? I tweet about social media. I have people know, and they rely on the fact that I will give them the latest and greatest, the breakthrough, whatever it is when I talk to vendors, new technology comes on board. They know, and that's why they follow me. So I have, 60% of adding value and telling folks, this is what it's all about, and this is what you might want to know in my particular area that I'm interested in. But there's also conversation. Hey, thanks for connecting with me. I made so many friends on Twitter. I don't know, you guys have the same thing. I found so many and met interesting people that made a difference in my life, and hoping that I'm making difference in people's life when I meet them on social networks, that it's crazy. People say it's not a relationship building tool. Heck, yes it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you're into that.
I think the first thing that you should do to even have a relationship or engagement is just listen.
Yes.
Right? Figure out who the people are that are interesting, right?
Follow
Maybe do
them.
a keyword search or hashtag. Actually, tweet chats are a great way to kind of meet a lot of people and dip your toe in the pool. And listen to what they're saying. Don't just talk first. You have 2 ears, you have one mouth.
Sorry,
listen.
Oh, sorry.
So,
As I talk, well, just because we're over time, but I just wanted to say a good place to start will be at the WITI Twitter, which I think is WITI Summit, right? Or that's the hashtag WITI Summit. And that will have all of our Twitter handles and all of everybody else's Twitter handles who's tweeting about this. And so if you start to connect with people within the communities of the place that you are, that's a really good start. So we are over time, sorry, but this was so much fun that we just didn't notice.
We'll be around too.
Thank you
if you
so
wanna
much.
connect with us.
Tweet at us, Facebook us, Pinterest us, or just come up and talk to us in real life because we're all in the same room. Thank you.